Hey team, wanted to make a quick video. I was going through my stuff and I found some jewelry that was sentimental, and so I wanted to reuse it. It was made out of cheap metal. It was essentially costumey, just kind of cheap stuff that most people could afford, from just basic department stores. So nothing fancy, but still sentimental and cute. But I've noticed, and this is, I accumulated a decent amount of kind of cheap metal jewelry throughout my time, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. But I'm just seeing this discoloration, and I don't know if you can see that, and it's frustrating because it's only in one spot. I'm thinking that what if, it's cheap metal and with like a plating of fancier metal over it to make it look nicer. And I'd like to see us embrace the cheap metal a little more, just because it's okay if it's made out of a cheap material, especially if, we're getting it cheap. But it'll last longer as a cheap metal if it looks like a cheap metal and isn't trying to be fancy metal, because now the chemical reaction has the gross, has taken, and it's gross, but because of the reaction, and sometimes it can feel kind of sticky or, whatever, but it's taken off in just one area. And so now I'm trying to figure out how we can take it off in on the entire bracelet, so we can just keep the bracelet, because what do you do with, it looks cheap, and it's only in one spot. If it was like a pattern of like oxidation or whatever the reaction was, that would be so much nicer. And so but it's just in one spot, and just to be obnoxious. And so I'm just curious what your thoughts are on this. If you have had cheap jewelry, if we can just kind of embrace the cheap, so that way we don't have like the cheap shining through underneath. It's just, it looks like it was made out of like a copper or because it's got like an orangish burnish, and that's very pretty to me. And then it can be kind of steampunk or without the silver plating on this. I don't need fake silver jewelry. This would be very interesting without it. So I guess I'm just curious what your thoughts are on this, if we can just embrace that bottom layer of metal and just forget the top part. I would literally keep this around if it was just a little more arty, a little more all the way through. But otherwise, I don't know what to do with it. I want to melt it down, because for a lot of the projects, I want to manipulate metals, and I don't need them to be fancy metals. Like, they can be cheap metals. But, it's just kind of, I don't have a way to melt this right now. I've been watching videos, and so it's kind of on the to-do list to figure out how to melt metals down to make trinkets and things. But in the meantime, what do you do with this cheap stuff that, and you can't bring this to a jewelry place. They're gonna be like, that's cheap metal, it's not worth the melting. But at home, I feel like, it's what we have. And, and now I'm thinking, well, I should probably just get fancy jewelry for moving forward. But then it's like, nah. Nah, not worth it. But so, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about this? Because this is one piece, and I just redid a lot of jewelry, and I threw a lot away, a lot of tarnished chains and things. We can melt them down, but do we obviously they're probably going to be subject to some sort of chemical reaction regardless over time. But I'm just curious. What do you think about it? I am going to salvage the pendants that were on this, and I think for right now I just don't really have a choice but to throw it away. But what a bummer. So let me know thoughts. Thanks. Bye.